Hey everyone. All right, so for this lesson, solving quadratic equations by factoring, we have a few steps that we're going to do so we can solve our quadratics by using the factoring that we've talked about. So the first thing you're going to do is you need to make sure that your equation is equal to 0 before you start doing anything. So for our example, we're going to write a step and we'll do the example. So for our example here, 2x squared plus x equals 10. It is not equal to 0. So we're going to move that 10 over. So we should have 2x squared plus x minus 10 is equal to 0. So that's step 1. Step 2 is when we begin our factoring, so that we need to look to see if we have a GCF. Okay, for our example, there is no GCF here, so we are good to go. We're going to look at our next step, step 3. We're going to move forward with our factoring. So if you remember your factoring list, we'd look for difference of two squares, we'd do grouping, and then we'd have our trinomials. So we don't have difference of squares, we don't have grouping, we don't have difference of squares because it's 3 terms instead of 2. We don't have grouping because we have 3 terms instead of 4. So we're going to factor it like a normal trinomial. So you're going to make your skeleton that we talked about, and you're still going to leave it equal to 0. Okay, we know factors of 2 are 2 and 1, so 2x and 1x. And then we know factors of 10 to get negative 10, but a positive 2. Remember, we're looking at our, nose and mouth or inner and outer terms. We know factors of 10 are 1 and 10 and 2 and 5. We know that we need to have a plus and a minus in here, so we're going to figure out where that needs to go. So I'm going to put in a plus and a minus. I'll put my 5 here and my 2 here, and we'll see if that works. So negative 5x, and this gives me positive 4x. Well, that gives me a negative 1x. I need a positive 1x. So that means I'm still getting my 1, but I'm not getting my sign right. So I'm going to go ahead and change my signs in front of my 5 and my 2 and see if that works. So I'm going to cross that one out because that did not work. Let's try another one. So 5x, so now it's positive. 2 times negative 2 gives me my negative 4x. And that gives me a positive 1. So that means these are my factors, okay? So once you have your factored quadratic, you're going to set your factors individually equal to 0. So what that means is you're going to take your 2x plus 5 and set it equal to 0, and you're going to take your x minus 2 and set it equal to 0. And then you're going to solve. Okay, that's going to be our last step. We're going to solve for x or whatever letter we have. So for the first one, we'll subtract 5. So 2x equals minus 5. Divide by 2. So this is a negative 5 over 2. So that's one of our roots. So that is a root or solution. Okay. So now this one we'll add 2 over our x minus 2, and we get a positive 2. So we say that for the quadratic, an answer for either of these can be at x equals negative 5 or x equals 2. And that's all we're doing. And we're just going to solve for x each time. So we'll do another one together. I want to jump to example 2. Okay, so I think you guys can do the trinomials on your own. So I want to look at number 2. I'm going to follow my steps. So I'm going to make sure the equation's equal to 0. I'm going to subtract over my 15. My 15x, so now it's 15x squared minus 15x is equal to 0. So now I'm going to look for a GCF. Okay, so I did step 1. Okay, now I'm going to look for a GCF. It does have a GCF of 5x, so I'm going to take that out. So now I have x minus 3, and it's still equal to 0, then my step 2 is done. So now it says factor, so if I'm looking at this, this is already factored because this is simple, the 5x, and this is simplified, the x minus 3. There's nothing else we can do. So step 3 is done. So now I'm going to look at setting each of the factors equal to 0. So I'm going to take 5x and equal to 0, and I'm going to put an or, because either one of these is solutions. They are both solutions, but you can have either one of them. And then I'm going to solve for x. So I'm going to divide over. So one of my solutions is 0, and then for x minus 3, I'll just add over. So I should have solutions at x equals 0 or at x equals 3. And that is all my steps. So that's what you're going to do for each one of these. Hey, you'll split it up and solve for x each time. And it looks like all of these are pretty straightforward. So go ahead and do what's assigned in the video. If you have questions, come to our live session.